Aw, who's got some little teeth? Who's got some little teeth?
It's playtime for him.
You really think you're gonna get away with biting my whole arm?
Jack, come on. Up.
In the time-honored tradition.
Different locations, same old crisp cracking in Diet Dr. Pepper.
That has been included in so many of our videos at this point.
Oh, I know. There's something satisfying about hearing it, in my opinion.
It's perfection. What a good boy. So we don't normally upload videos on a Saturday, at least not when I'm not late.
No, you guys weren't supposed to even get, like, anything approaching this video for, like, another couple months.
But luckily, I don't need sleep.
Yeah, that was the plan, and then they announced a collab for Witch on the Holy Night, and I was just like, we could split this into 2 parts.
We could.
And so I was like, we don't need to. So he's like, no, I can do it. Give it a minute, it'll stop. Don't you love the weird noises my apartment makes?
Yeah, it feels
old
haunted.
Apartment, old pipes.
Feels haunted. Love it. Feels thematic for Mahotsukai no Yoru.
Yes, the haunted house on the hill. Unfortunately, I do not live in a rich person house on a hill.
No.
I live in a overpriced apartment in the suburb.
At least delivery drivers don't snub you.
So yeah, we actually got around to reading it. Witch on the Holy Night.
Well, I think not all of it.
No, just chapters 1 through 5. So
and that includes 5.1 and 5.2.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if you wanted me to include both, but I did.
Yes. Yeah.
Almost unsuccessfully. I fell asleep in the middle of part 2 and almost did not finish it by this afternoon because I did not mean to fall asleep. It was an accident. I'm sure y'all understand why I might have fallen asleep in the middle of playing this game. Let me rephrase that. In the middle of reading this game.
It's not really a game.
It's not. And yet it costs $40.
That's cheap for games these days. You know the standard price
This
for
is not
video
a game.
Yeah, the standard price for video games these days is $70.
Yeah, but knick-knack, this isn't a game. This is a glorified fan fiction. I mean, not fan fiction.
That's like the wrong word. It's picture book.
Yeah, this is a glorified picture book.
But that's just the medium of visual novels. It's been around for ages.
No, you get to make choices in visual novels, typically.
Not always. It's not guaranteed. They're not always guaranteed to be actually meaningful either. I'll have you know, this is probably the most highly regarded, like, Type Moon visual novel at the moment.
I will omit vocalizing what that tells me about Type Moon novels.
Look, I don't know why you... So this is probably the best place to start this as a discussion on visual novels as a whole. Because I threw you into the deep end here. The most literal definition of a visual novel I could find.
Yeah, like, hear me out here. I don't play visual novel. Like, I've played some games that could be classified as visual novels on my computer when I was younger. And, like, I've seen them shown in, like, anime. But this is probably the first time I've played, like, a proper visual novel, and oh boy did I struggle. This was an unpleasant experience, and I think part of that is maybe because the first chapter is really long, and for the whole first chapter I was thinking this is just an introduction, I'll get to actual gameplay features once this is over, and then I didn't, and it just kept being click read, 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 click read.
Just a book on a screen.
I don't do well with book on a screen like that because there's not enough. I read fan fiction online. obviously. I read books largely on my phone these days, right? If I don't have a physical copy in front of me, I read books on my phone. So it's not as if I'm not used to reading a book on a screen, but I'm used to reading a book where I can just scroll through the dialogue, like, at my own speed, and not be, like, stuck, like, because it took me half of chapter 1 to figure out how to speed up the dialogue. Because I didn't realize, but when because I'm traveling at the moment, so I'm not at home, as you can see from our recording location. And so I had to bring my PlayStation with me and hook it up to a TV I'm not used to hooking it up to. And at the beginning, I forgot to adjust the screen area to the size of the TV it was hooked up to. So I was actually missing the chunk of screen that included all of, like, the setting bits, right? So I had to try to navigate by memory to the settings and get it to shrink, and then I finally figured out where fast text was. And I didn't even figure out where skip was on accident until chapter 5, at which point I very quickly had to figure out where undo skip was.
Yeah, that one's not necessarily a feature you needed to figure out.
No, because it moves too fast. I think the irony for me is that fast text clicking through every time was not fast enough, but skip was too fast. And there are times when you can't skip certain scenes or something, like it flips through scenery and you can't skip, and I would get distracted during those scenes. Like, I'd check my phone, or I was on stream last night while I was playing through chapters 3 and 4, right? And I'd, like, get distracted, check the stream, and then I wouldn't go back to the game for, like, 15 minutes, And so it really dragged out some of the time I spent playing it, but it wasn't necessarily productive time I spent playing it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I was contemplating what I was reading or thinking about the story. No, I was distracted. And part of that was because it's not... I already struggle to sit and do one thing at a time, right? And that's probably some sort of ADHD, ADD problem that I have that's undiagnosed at this point. Women with ADHD and ADD are actually diagnosed significantly less than men because the symptoms show up differently when they're young. But for me, it's very hard to focus on doing just one thing. And when that one thing is click a button, read text, click a button, read text, it's even harder, right? Because I can't be doing something else at the same time. Because it's not like there's English audio to back up what I'm hearing, right? So I can't rely on hearing the dialogue. I have to be reading it. But I'm not reading it at a speed or in a medium that's conducive to me actually getting through it in a way that makes sense at a pace that I'm contented with. And I can't listen to music in the background, and I can't, like, be looking at something else. But I'm also not doing anything with my hands other than just click, 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 click. And that is not... It is
like the missing link from hell for a manga and an anime for you.
Yeah. It was like the worst place between a manga and an anime. Like, too much text, but not enough text. Text too fast, but text too slow.
And I'm sure the fact that you've actually started playing games a little bit more recently didn't help either, because now you're fighting against the instincts you have, like when you have that controller in your hand and you're sitting with the PS5 on the TV. Yeah,
it also doesn't help that maybe, I don't know, I thought there would maybe be a little bit more for me to do, like some more choices for me to make, and maybe that's just because whenever I see a visual novel on in an anime or the few I played in the past, there's more choice-based things, so I can choose a dialogue option, and even if it doesn't affect the end of the story, at least I have the autonomy of reading through the dialogue options and choosing. Or, like, for example, the game I've been playing most recently is Baldur's Gate. And Baldur's Gate, the essential part of the game is reading your dialogues and making decisions. Like, if nothing else in the world, Baldur's Gate has gotten me to actually listen to NPC dialogue. I mean, you saw it when I was playing Wind Waker. There were times where I would just absent-mindedly click through dialogue because the few times that the few phone games that I played regularly before I could play games on my computer, I was interested in the mechanics and the gameplay, but not the actual story. So I just got used to just clicking past story and ignoring it in favor of just doing the mechanics to get what I wanted.
I knew this. So I'm going to make it clear right now. I did not go into this not expecting this. I expected this the moment we streamed the second stream of Wind Waker, and I saw like,
and I kept missing the dialogues and
like,
going, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I was like, oh god. So I knew going into this that was going to be how it was for you, because this is oops all story.
Yeah.
And you can tell how a person approaches video games based off how they interact with, like how they're going to approach something like this based off how they interact with video games. The moment I saw you play Wind Waker, I knew as far as video games were concerned, you were goddamn Connor-brained.
Look, I'm going to be real. I'm not good at the action parts of video games, but that's the parts I want to get to most of the time. Like, yeah. I'm not physically good at using a controller to fight, but that's the part I want to get to when I'm using a controller to play a game. Like, I don't want to be just clicking through endless dialogue and reading endless dialogue. And I get it if it's the story, but, like, even... I had these games that I played when I was a kid. Trade Winds, right? So Trade Winds Classics, Trade Winds Legends, Trade Winds Caravans, Trade Winds 1, Trade Winds 2. And part of the thing there is that you have quests to fulfill. And I think when I was a kid, I paid more attention to the quests. But, like, these days, sometimes when I go back to play those games, I'll just skip through the quest prompts knowing that there's going to be a little exclamation point telling me where I need to go. Or knowing that at some point I'll make the right choices to fill out this quest, even if it's not immediate or something like that. And I'm used to having... I'm also used to games that have tutorial modes for me to use, and tutorial mode enables my dialogue skipping. Because if there's a tutorial that like gives me a little marker of where I need to go, then I obviously don't need to hear the dialogue that tells me where to go. I just follow the quest marker, which screwed me over in Skyrim. Because I got stuck in Skyrim. When I tried to play it for the first time, there was no quest marker. And I was just in a village, and it was like, go to this place, and I don't know where that place is, and I didn't know where to go, and I couldn't even tell if I was going in the right direction. And I was like, I have no indication, and I didn't... Like, it didn't seem like any of the NPCs were being helpful. I mean, I'm sure that they could have been, but I didn't give them the chance. I was just like, let me just go.
I think a lot more people, like, this isn't a you thing. I think a lot of people do genuinely play games more on vibes in terms of direction than they do actually following along what's going on.
Yeah, so it was a struggle. And then, like I said, it also... The speed of the dialogue did not engender my attention span, and it left me feeling like really drowsy as I was like clicking through it. I was almost like falling asleep as I clicked through it because nothing was happening, especially in the first 4 chapters. Like, it's just dialogue and, well, it's chapter 4. The first 3 chapters, nothing's happening, per se, except a ton of conversations between characters.
I mean, if you believe it, that's often what most Type Moon fans love Type Moon for, is there, like a lot of especially old visual novel Type Moon fans, they love their slice of life stuff from Nasu.
I mean, in a way, I get it, and I will say I did kind of perk up when I started getting like the Mother Goose rhymes and the references to like the fairy tales and stuff like that. Like, I perked up when I saw that, especially like the Night of the Witches, right? Chapters 5.1 and 5.2.
And it seems like you remember like some of the most... I'm not going to call it impactful because it's not impactful at all, but some of the most like, oh yeah, that's relatable moment. You you mentioned earlier, you brought it up, the food delivery on the hill.
My dude comes from a village with no electricity, no contact with the outside world. Man was on the 2nd floor of a school and was just going to step out a window.
Yeah.
Same, bro. Same. I too sometimes just want to step out a window.
But like... If I were to challenge you on this, because I can challenge you on this, because I'm reading this I'm pretty much reading this as we're recording this. Like these slice of life sections like that mostly comprise chapters 1 and through most of chapter 4.
Yeah, with the exception of the fight at the park at night in chapter 4, or is it in 3?
That's chapter 3, I believe.
Yeah.
And then there's the little the side story. That's why I told you might want to just read that as you go, because that side story breaks up that chapter 1 through 3 stretch a little bit more.
I went back after doing chapters 1 through 3 and read all the side stories I had available to me. There isn't one per chapter. The side stories come in chunks.
No, they just kind of come here and there.
Okay, I was
Sometimes
worried.
they'll even appear in the chapter as like just an extension of the chapter itself.
I was worried that I'd missed it.
No, there's not that many. This is what you read was basically the tutorial for as far as that means for the
because I had 8 side stories that popped
Yeah.
up in chapters 1 through 5.2, I think 8 that were labeled as new in the archive book, and I read through all 8 of those scenes or all 8 of those chapters.
Yeah. But what was I saying? But like you brought up Baldur's Gate earlier, and I think that actually could have also fucked you over a bit because Baldur's Gate is uniquely, even for most RPGs.
Yeah, it's
very player driven, very like open to player input.
Yeah.
So much so, like that's what got the game on the map for a lot of the general gaming audience was just how much it was open to people. So like I take you from like you go from that to the literal least open thing I could hand you.
No, and I get it, but like you have to think that like when speaking about my visceral experience, like the games I've actually played to a point of use, right? The T.H.E games.
Yep.
Where it doesn't matter if you follow the story or not. And you do get to make... You can decide whether you want to accept or deny quests outside of the main storyline. And you can accomplish them in different ways. Like, you can literally accomplish any quest in 1,000 different ways, and they're not going to care. Except for one specific quest, which can only be done in a certain way if the gods are willing when you're playing. Because it depends entirely on the random rolls that the computer AI makes to determine dates. But it's basically completely open for me to do whatever I want. And then Baldur's Gate. And outside of all of the T.H.E, Baldur's Gate, the other games I played the most on the computer, when I was younger, were point-and-click hidden object mystery games, right? With, like, stories. So I get the whole story thing. Like, I don't skip past the story on my point-and-click hidden object, but the story in my hidden object games is broken up by physical puzzles that I have to do, items to collect, items to combine, puzzles to figure out, which gives me that break in the dialogue that gets me just that little bit of like...
If my goal was to ease you in and actually tutorialize you into just reading, I would have given you something like closer to like a Professor Layton or Ace Attorney where it is being broken up by like, oh, this is point and click, you're here looking
like
for
little
things in
mini
the map
games
here.
too. Just like little
Layton,
things to break it up.
Because
that's... I've talked to you before about the Dark Parables series. That's all that is.
Mm-hmm.
It is essentially just a visual novel where you have no choice autonomy, but broken up with mini games and hidden object puzzles. And really beautiful art. Which, by the way, there's good art in this visual novel.
Oh yeah, the presentation-wise, as far as the artwork and the parts where it's practically animated, this is like, even as far as visual novels go, this is about as high-end as it gets as far as that presentation
There
goes.
were a few times in chapter 5.1 and 5.2 where I'd finish all the dialogue, and then once I figured it out, I'd skip backwards and then fast forward through the movement because it almost created an animation to watch.
Chapter 5 is like stunning.
Yeah.
Artwork and like animation-wise.
Yeah, and I love the Lewis Carroll. Obviously, Alice and Lewis Carroll and all that was really super fun, especially after the stream last night when we were talking about nursery rhyme.
Yeah, no, that's chapter 5 is in the entire visual novel. Chapter 5 is my favorite part.
It was longer than I was expecting, so it kind of threw me off because chapter 1 was really long, and then 2, 3, and 4 were super short. And then 5.1 was massive. And 5.2 was almost as long.
Mm-hmm.
They were huge. And I was not expecting that.
Well, there was something I wanted to bring.
Also, get fucked. I will never recover from the opening scenes of this visual novel. And audience, do you want to know why? Because 3 of my cats have been pulled out of car engines. 3 of them. My oldest 2 and my second to youngest from my original 5 were pulled out of car engines. Well, the first 2 were pulled out of car engines where they played, right? That my dad had this car that didn't run in the driveway, and they used to hide in it during the summer, and we pulled them out and took them to the vet, and then they were ours. And then my 4th cat, Sissa, who I don't think you've ever seen on the channel because she typically doesn't like to be around other people. She really only likes me. So she stays away from you guys, understandably. But she when we heard her, it was like 110-degree day in the middle of summer, and we heard someone meowing from under the car, and we knew there was a mama cat with a couple of kittens, so we figured they were just hiding in the shade under the car. So we went to the grocery store, we came back, and we'd seen that the mama cat had moved her kittens, but we could still hear the meowing coming from the car, and it was like getting fainter and more desperate. And it turned out that she had been crawling through the engine, and she found the opening into the wheel well from inside the engine, and she fell down. And we had to pull the entire wheel well from the car off the car and turn it upside down and like slide her out. And she was like almost dead, like covered in her own urine and feces, like wet, covered in dirt and just dehydrated as all hell. It was like 110 degrees. And she was in this hot car fender in like the full sun for like several hours. So like...
You read that part and that was traumatic.
Like a visceral reaction, because that I like live in fear of that happening at my house, because we do have a cat colony living around my house, and while most of them are big enough that you would notice them, I do have a neighbor who keeps bringing new fucking kittens, and they're very exploratory, and I would hate to have one of them get into like the engine or underneath my car when I'm about to drive it. Like that would absolutely destroy me. I would not be okay.
It's funny. I never, like, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't remember that part period to remind you because it's such a short part at the beginning. But I've read that 2 or 3 times now, that part. And every time I read it, I'm always like, oh gosh. Mm-hmm. This would hit particularly home for Seki.
Yeah, I needed a trigger warning for that. I needed to, like, be warned about that because I was not emotionally ready for that to drop on me. I was like, goddamn, what if that had happened instead of us pulling Luna and Silver out of the car? God, I would have never gotten cats if that had happened.
So, like, that part's interesting because that part, it makes even more sense to me on reread. Mm-hmm. Not because anything in the future really informs what happens there, but because there's a bit of a dynamic there where it's one of the most thematically important parts of the visual novel, actually.
I'll be honest, I've been trying to forget it.
Well, those cats died because of a product of human civilization.
Well, yeah.
And
I know in chapter 5 there's that long dialogue near the end about human civilization and progress and all that stuff.
Like, if you didn't catch on already, this entire visual novel is a scathing critique of the development of human civilization and capitalism.
I did think, because there were some interesting parts, like when we were talking about the abandoned school, and how it was revived, but they didn't bother to revive the original school building. They just built a new one in a different place.
And just let the old one sitting there.
Yeah, and the fact that they're living in what's essentially like a renovated, deserted mansion up on the hill, like once belonged to someone doing other stuff, and then like the abandoned theme park.
And you have like one of our point of view characters is literally a man coming from practically nature.
Yeah, and who is just so very naive and confused about everything. Either he takes people directly at their word or just doesn't understand them because they have been changed by progress and civilization, and he hasn't. It reminded me a little bit, when they went into the theme park and like the abandoned... Like, they were talking about the abandoned areas. It reminded me a little bit of Suzume for a second. Because Suzume's got the abandoned theme park as well. And then in general, I'm a big fan of Urbex channels on YouTube. Like, the more respectful ones. The ones where they're going in to document what is happening to man-made structures and areas after they're abandoned, right? And there's a lot of groups in Europe are very big on the documenting and not leaving any trace, no tagging, no stickers, not publicizing where they are, just giving you like a vague, like, we're in this country in a valley, But then showing you just these things that humans built in the 18th and 19th centuries or earlier that humans abandoned and are now falling into ruin and being reclaimed by nature. And it's really impactful sometimes to see that, what someone tells you might have been like a huge resort hotel that would have created like massive amounts of pollution in a particular area and been like a metropolis, and to see nature reclaiming it is really fascinating.
Yeah. The other part of that introduction, though, is the part that I'm sure got you, you can't unkill things.
I'm gonna be honest, I was so traumatized over the cats, I didn't give a shit. Also, but it's like that. I get how that was maybe supposed to be thematic or something, but I don't know. I saw that. I was like, people die when they are killed, and just all the jokes about like that sort of thing desensitized that moment for me, and it didn't feel as impactful as I'm sure it was meant to, Like I didn't look at that and go, "Oh God, they're right," It was just okay. Click through next dialogue. You know what I mean?
Not really, but...
I don't know, my guy. I was thinking of my cats with their heads popped off. Don't test me on that one. I don't think I paid attention to most of the chapter after the cats died. I had to go back and reread the dialogues in the drop-down dialogue thing afterwards. Because I was like, I feel like I missed half of that chapter because I was just like, the fucking cats. I can empathize with one of our main female characters being very irritated at being called to school on a not school day early in the morning.
Why did I know that would be the character you'd empathize with?
I mean, not overall entirely, but like we have like three main characters basically. We got Shizuki,
Sojiro, the mountain boy.
Yeah.
You have Alice.
Isn't his name Shizuki?
It's Shizuki Sojiro. He has a bit of a weird name.
Yeah, Shizuki or something like that. And then Alice and Aoto? Aoko. That's it. Isn't her name? Both her names start with an A, right?
It's Aoko Aozaki.
That's why. Yeah, AA. And then Alice, of course. I kind of hated that like 60% of this novel is just me staring at people from like here to here with like no faces or heads, or sometimes just like black outlines. Like I feel like I just wanted to see the characters more. Like in general. And I get taking a long time in chapter 1 to show us our main characters. But then after that, until chapter 5, like most of chapters 2 through 4 was just here-to-here views of characters. You know what I mean? Which was a little annoying.
I don't think I ever caught that. Like, I don't think... Maybe it's just that I've read the thing in its entirety and I am well beyond the point where I've read the introduction. Mm-hmm. But I don't really remember them, like, really lingering on, like, avoiding the head that much. I just remember panning shots occasionally. There were parts where, like, you start there, like, when someone enters a room, but...
I feel like I spent a lot of time just staring at people's torsos. With no head. Or the head only showing up briefly. Or the whole person showing, but just as a black silhouette. You know? And not always for, like, mystery reasons. Like, half the time you knew exactly who it was. It was just black silhouette, though. Instead of actually showing us the character. Which was a little annoying. Because it just felt like I had to double check my screen proportions to make sure that I had the right screen ratio again. But I did. Yeah, like it wasn't me having the wrong screen ratio like half the first chapter. It's just there was a lot of times when we were staring at people from like here to here. Which was a little annoying. Show me your face! Show me that saber face. I'm kidding.
No, don't. Not saber face, but we don't want to touch on the shared faces controversies. That's coming up with the movie right now. I'll say it. They've changed Aoko's face in the movie because it's ufotable, and this is a different artist than ufotable has.
Yeah.
Aoko's face looks remarkably like Rin's face in the movie, and people are not happy about that.
Ooh, yeah, I did see that there was a movie upcoming, so it's not out yet?
No, it's probably coming out at the very end of the year in Japan, so if it comes to the West at theaters, it'll be at the beginning of next year.
It's a long development process.
Do you know when the original version of this came out?
I know when the movie was announced.
You want to know when the original version of this came
2012.
This is...
I looked it up. 2012. Yeah. But the movie was announced in 2021.
Yeah, from what we understand, there's COVID things that happen with that.
No, I could see that. Yeah. But yeah, because I looked it up because I was curious to see... I looked it up after chapter 1 when I was partway through chapter 2 because I was trying to figure out if I was doing something wrong for there to not be any choices in it. So I ended up like Googling it and being, which was interesting because I actually did find a website that had all the dialogue.
Yeah.
Just listed by chapter, which was nice.
Was it Trimegistus?
It looked like a Wikia.
Yeah, there's a custom fan wiki that I've actually been collecting this for some of the translated light novels that we've done. It just collects the fan translations in one spot, and that's probably what you've stumbled into.
But then I also went to look at like the date of release and stuff like that. So I know that the original game came out in 2012, but that's not the 2012 version, right?
They're more or less saying this is just
the enhanced edition?
It's just HDified and they add voice acting.
Yeah, it's the enhanced edition, which was 2020 or 2021.
Yeah, 2022, I think.
Oh, okay. I knew it was in the 2020s. But yeah, so I saw that, and I was like, oh, PlayStation 4. Okay, I mean that it makes sense. Like it worked. It fit the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the art was detailed and the settings were interesting. I wish we'd had more backdrops. I'm gonna be honest, because it sometimes was a little bit boring standing in the same backdrop time after time after time. So it would have been nice to have a little bit more variety in the backdrop. And I really don't feel like that's a hard thing to ask when half of the scenes are stills. To just add a few more for variety. Like, I don't think that's an unreasonable thing, and that might have made it a little bit more interesting for me. Or, like, even if they'd, like, gone through and, like, hid little Easter eggs in some of the images for me to find or something. Like, anything to kind of break up returning to the same images again and again and again. And, like, I'm sure it's fine. And, like, you don't need to, but it would have been nice to have a few more images or different perspectives of some of the rooms. Like, we only ever saw, like, the school and the classroom from, like, one angle. You could have created another couple angles or something and, like, flipped them up. And then maybe it would have been more interesting to watch.
That's where things get a little complicated because it's not like a 3D. They don't make a 3D space and then
I don't need it to be a 3D though. I just, we go back to the classroom, for example, in like almost every single one of the chapters, like 1 through 4, right? But we only ever see one angle of the classroom, and it's as if you're standing at the back door staring at the board, right? You could have just created one more backdrop where, like, let's say you're in like a seat in like the left corner by the window staring at the board, right? And then had that show up once for a conversation. Do you get what I mean? Like, I don't require a 4-dimensional room, just a few more perspectives.
I think where I might push back on that is especially because we only read like that 1 through 5, there are still like 2/3 of a visual novel left with its own, and they all have their own artwork as they go forward. They get more and more scenes. I feel like you might be underestimating how much time really goes into each one of those images and how dynamic they actually make those images.
I mean, I'm sure I am, but it feels like until chapter 5, it feels like I saw like 15 images total. You know what I mean? I'm sure there were a few more than that. Like, I'm sure there were like 20 or something, but it doesn't feel like, because in chapter 5, they have a lot more variety of stuff happening, which is what made it so interesting to try to fast forward through it after reading it, because you could see stuff changing. Mm-hmm. But you like doing that in chapter 2 or 3 doesn't fucking matter, because you just go from place to place to place to place in the same scenes. And obviously, I mean, we are talking about chapters 1 through 5, so
yeah.
This is like me lamenting about you not liking a plot point in one of my novels because you're in volume 4 and I'm in volume 14, and the plot point has been solved satisfactorily in a way that I know you would enjoy, but obviously I can't say that because you've not read that far.
Maybe, but I don't know if your problem will be solved in the visual novel. Like, I'm not sure if your expectations will increase as we increase the scope here.
I just want there to be a little bit more for me to look at. Because now I've seen, like, the front of the school image, like, 16 times. Show me a different angle. You know? I don't need it to, like, increase exponentially. I just need some more perspectives and images.
Because this is about as, like, and they do dynamic stuff at the beginning there. I actually caught that, and I looked into it later. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really get that much more dynamic in the genre.
I said, I didn't have a problem with chapter 5. Chapter 5 was very interesting. You know, part 1 and part 2. It was mostly I guess it was more like the day-to-day stuff where you were just seeing, like, classroom, hallway, school front, classroom, hallway, school front, classroom, hallway, school front, sometimes for like 15 scenes at a time. You know?
I will say, especially the classroom.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I've played some like visual novel style stuff online. I get the whole like, go to the classroom, go to the hallway, go to the classroom, go to the hallway, go to the classroom, go to the hallway, and it's the same thing. But like, you know, when I played those online, it was a free game that was running off of like a Chrome browser, you know? I don't know. It was a uniquely painful experience to participate in, with a surprisingly interesting story when I thought about the story and not the medium.
What you're saying is you're looking forward to the movie.
Yes, actually. The movie or just a straight paper novel version, either would have done better for me.
I don't think we have a manga version of this.
It doesn't even have to be a manga. You could literally just put this dialogue in a printed book with the still images interspersed every few pages, and it would have done better for me. Like, genuinely. It needed to be a book or a TV show. This in between did not work for me, and this was a painful experience.
We still got 2/3 of the damn thing left.
Yeah, when I was looking it up, I saw the estimated time to completion. It's like 26 hours for like total completion.
I stopped at chapter 5, A, because I knew it was a good breaking point, and B, because I knew if you had any, like, you would get a good idea. You could procrastinate that and finish that if you really wanted to. The rest you absolutely cannot. Because my pacing when reading this was not your pacing.
Yeah.
My pacing when reading this was literally, I read a chapter a night before bed. It's a bedtime stories kind of deal.
Well, I'm gonna
but
be real.
Also that was easy for me, and this is where I kind of wish I could have done this for you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't play this on my TV. I didn't have to sit down, get comfortable, pull out a controller, and go. You know what I did?
What?
I pulled my Switch out of the dock and read it on it like it was a tablet.
That probably would have been better than me
and
on
I wish
PlayStation.
I could have lent you that copy, but I have that copy digitally.
Yeah, no. I was playing it on the PlayStation, and it wasn't very engaging there. And to be fair, there are other games that I play that I find not engaging that have a whole lot of extra play. Like, this isn't a condemnation of the entire VN genre. Just this particular one that I did not enjoy playing. Because there's plenty of, like, other games that I don't enjoy playing, even though by rights I should, because they have all of the necessary things to make me happy. I just don't like the combination of all of them when I try them.
I would really have to see what VNs you're playing. Like, because there's a scale on VNs of how much of it's VN. Like, Professor Layton, I would qualify as a VN, but it leans into being a puzzle game more than a VN.
You will never know, because I will not admit that time in my life to anyone.
You don't have to... Because there's also... Because this is where things get a little interesting, is you also have the difference between, like, raw visual novel and a dating sim. Where dating sims, you actually have to make choices. And I feel like I'm hitting a little closer to home here without Seki shaking her head. Because dating sims that inherently have more going on choice-wise. Because you have to. That's the point. It's a different genre. Whereas if I were to hand you, say, Fate Stay Night, while that one does have choices, a lot of the choices are either less noticeable, or they're spread a lot farther in between than your average dating sim would be.
Yeah, but I don't care if the choices matter. I just want to be doing something besides clicking X. with nothing happening other than just progressing. I don't need the choices to matter. I need the illusion of choice. I need the illusion of choice.
So I'm happy. So that's funny that you bring that up, because would you believe that's an actual... It's not a thing in Fate. Or no, it is a thing in Fate Grand Order, actually. You're going to get to see that in Fate Grand Order if you read Septum. But the illusion of choice is actually a huge argument around Fate Grand Order and other like games, like in JRPGs especially, where like my dialogue options mean nothing. Those three dialogue options are literally the same thing said differently, and it doesn't actually change the story at all no matter what I click.
Yeah, but I put a different emphasis into the way that I read them, which makes me feel particularly attached to one over the others, and then I make a decision, and I don't know if it affects the end story, and I don't care if it affects the end story. I got to put my 2 cents in and pick the one that I wanted. It's the illusion of choice, and I am perfectly happy to participate in the willing suspension of disbelief and the illusion of choice, to accept that I in fact have choices and will enjoy those choices regardless of their impact on the final story.
But the other reason... Look, I wish you clicked more at the visual novel. I will openly admit that. But, like, I positioned myself perfectly here. I got one victory in exchange for a loss. Because you know what you've now served as a perfect example of?
What?
You know, there is this
elitist
elitist wing of the Type Moon fandom that looks at people recommending the anime to say Fate, or soon Mahotsukai no Yoru Natsuhime. And they say, the correct way to get into the franchise is to read the visual novel, and you shouldn't recommend anything else.
Mm-hmm.
People are willing to... I don't care about the time investment, because people are willing to catch up on One Piece, which is notably longer than Fate. And the argument always comes down to Type Moon fans don't know how to read.
Empirically, I know how to read.
Exactly.
If anyone in the entire anime fandom collectively knows how to read, it's me.
And a point I've always kind of maintained, I don't know if I've maintained it on the channel as much, but a point I've maintained, like if I get into fights with people online in like random comment section in the underbelly of like Tortuga or something, the point I've always made is that visual novels themselves are a uniquely different genre than either video games or books. And people can have hang-ups about that genre in specific, involving either like how the genre works, the accessibility, the raw muscle memory you have if you even touch video games, and like where that takes your instincts.
It's also, and here's my 2 cents. I've got 2 things here. First of all, it's also the perception of what you're doing on the system you're using. If you had given me this on a Nintendo DS game, would not have cared. I would have absolutely just gone, oh, okay, this is just how this is. Because I have played Nintendo DS games that ran exactly like this, giving me virtually no illusion of choice, playing through story chapters where no choice, even if I had a choice, the choice I made did not matter, right? Like, it just did not. Like, for example, I had, like, the Nintendo DS game of Chronicles of Narnia Prince Caspian. You played that like a book on your Nintendo DS, and half the game was just clicking through pages of the book and reading them, right? Where you did very little else, right? So, if you'd given this to me on, like, a Switch or a DS, right, I probably would have just looked at it, chalked it up to being a less complex game by perception, and not had as big of a problem with it. Whereas because I was playing it on PlayStation, I expected more, and that comes with the perception of what types of games you can play on which gaming systems. Because automatically, when you think of Nintendo DS, you don't think of, like, huge games, and when you think of PlayStation, you don't think of playing, like, Imagine Figure Skater. On PlayStation, you think of playing, like, Skyrim, right? And those are 2 very different levels when I ascribe how much I expect to get out of a game, first of all. And second of all, I am, by all accounts, a reader, right? I read more than I watch anything. I read more than I listen to things. I cannot do audiobooks. I almost read exclusively. If I am not actively engaging in conversation with someone, I'm reading. That includes during class. That includes when I have free time. That includes when I should be sleeping. Sometimes that includes when I'm eating. Sometimes that includes while I'm watching other shows, I will still be reading, right? When I watch shows, I put subtitles on because I read the subtitles, sometimes before they can even come out of the actors' mouths. And part of that is that at this point, I read so much, I read extremely fast. So the pacing of a visual novel does not work for me.
No, because it's a very controlled pace.
It is too slow. I'm reading the words and, like, in my head and moving on. So this has voices, right? Mm-hmm. And if the line is voiced, I hear the line start, and by the time they've said the first word, I've finished the sentence.
I'm the same way, actually, with this. I think I made unlike you, I had the ability to make the conscious effort to, like, let it play through the first time. Second time,
yeah. So it's it's too slow for me to ingest like a book. Mm-hmm. and it's too controlled in its pacing. In a book or in a reading scenario, I can just flip at my own speed, scroll at my own speed. I can't do that here because there's no way for me to scroll through scenes fast enough to match my reading pace and slow enough to not miss things, because the skip moves too fast and the fast text and clicking moves too slow. And then on top of that, like the perception of the console I was playing it on, I expected more because of my experiences, which have primarily been with games that you would consider like big title games, right? Mm-hmm. Like the majority of games I've played on my PlayStation have been big title games.
You haven't necessarily been digging around the indie scene much, which is the much smaller title games you would get on the PlayStation.
And while I have a few indie games, the one I'm currently playing is Raji, which is a 3D platformer based on Indian epic mythology, which is not at all what a visual novel is like, and it is absolutely fucking amazing. I love Raji. Go play it. But that's like the only indie game I'm currently playing, because most of my game library is made up of things that I got really, really cheap, things that I was recommended based on the few games I've actually played, and things that I looked at the art and I thought, that looks cool. So I have like all of the Assassin's Creed. I have Skyrim. I have all of The Witcher because I love The Witcher, right? Like I have Tomb Raider, right? I have Arkham Knights or Gotham Knights. Those are the kind of games I have on there. Hogwarts Legacy, One Piece Odyssey.
But you've conditioned yourself to like expect almost a cinematic experience out of your PlayStation.
Yeah, I really have. And when I didn't get that, it was disappointing. But if you'd given this to me on Switch, I don't think I would have been as disappointed.
So, I don't know how this is going to go over font-wise. I'd have to see how it looks on your damn phone. That's kind of why I was like, even if I didn't think you were going to do it, that's kind of why I helped you set up the AirPlay on your phone. Because that way you aren't necessarily tethered to the TV and having that up there, if that works out for you.
I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot that was an option when I was playing through most of it. And then...
But that might be a little easier for you to at least experiment with as we go into the second, or to the rest of it here.
I might try. I genuinely think I might try, because I think that would be a slightly better experience and maybe be a little bit easier to deal with. But yeah, because the few games I've played that are somewhat similar to this have been on phone.
The only place that might be a problem is when we get into things like font size.
I keep my font pretty small.
Okay, typically. So if you can read small font size, so normally with like AirPlay, the problem if you don't have like a backbone is going to be controls, but it's just A.
Yeah, it's just A. Remember, I'm very blind, so my glasses function as magnifying glasses. That is true. No, you don't believe me. My glasses can actually be used as magnifying glasses for other people.
The other real problem with that idea also could be, I don't know, because past chapter 5, there's a lockdown, so you can't use the share button on your PlayStation.
Oh, yeah, I triggered that as recording isn't available either past chapter 5. So I didn't check to see if I could still play it.
Yeah, you might actually not be able to. Look, in the worstest case scenario, you just pay for like the next movie ticket I go to, and I buy the Switch version. You take liberal use of that skip button.
I mean, we'll see. I think there's definitely a way for this to be better for me, and I think that's twofold. And this is going to sound really weird, but one, I need to be sitting up in a chair watching this on a smaller screen, right? Or like sitting up somewhere where I can be in this position. One. And two, I'm going to need someone else with me to make snarky comments the whole way through.
The problem is now you've started chapters 1 through 5, so no one else will be right there with you.
Oh, I'm sure I have plenty of friends who don't actually give a fuck about the content and are willing to like sit next to me and watch me snark my way through like an hour of gameplay at a time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure I can find plenty of friends to do that, because that's one of the few ways that my brain is able to allow me to focus on one thing at once, especially when it comes to TV shows or things that I'm having to do visually, is to have someone with me that I can talk to and discuss as it's happening, which creates the distraction my brain needs to focus on the TV. It's how I've actually been succeeding at watching some live action TV shows recently that I haven't been into. Or I'm just like, someone just sits beside me and they've already seen it and they just have a conversation with me as we watch it about it. And that helps a lot.
So I'm going to pull this out a little more when we eventually do the second half. But I have this convenient art book here. Let's see, I want to see if I could find the school shot that annoys you so much.
It's the classroom one. It's specifically...
Bam!
It's that one. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it. Oh, big switch.
Yeah, I'm not going to flip through that too much. I'll let you look through that when we eventually do the second part.
Yeah, because I had a friend with me this afternoon talking about the game with me while I played it, and it made it a little bit more tolerable. So I'm thinking maybe that might help, and I'm sure I can find people who are willing to do that with me over the next couple of weeks to get through it. It's not like I ever spend any time to myself these days.
So for the next part, this is going to go up pretty quickly after we record it, but you won't see the next part for a while, but we have a month before the next part.
Yeah. Which means I'm going to have to be playing an hour a day, an hour every other day, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm moving, I think I'm moving faster than normal just because I read faster, so I'm making liberal use of fast load, but it still takes, some time. I mean, I'd say collectively, chapters 1 through 5 probably took, let's see.
Do you want to split this into...
7 hours? I think chapters 1 through 5 took about 7 hours for me, and I think that's what they're supposed to about.
Yeah, I finished it in a few nights, so...
Yeah. To be fair, it probably would have been 5.5 if I hadn't been on the stream with you last night. Because I was very distracted.
I thought you'd be. I heard you told me you wanted it too. I'm like, oh god, that's a bad idea. I'm not going to tell her not to.
Yeah, she's going to get nothing done.
Yeah.
I got one collective chapter done, and it was chapter 3.
But this is a visual novel with goddamn post game.
I did see that when I was reading about it.
Yeah.
Because the post-game is the only place where you can make choices, right? The solving the mystery thing?
The post-game, the same way that you've been seeing little side stories in the main game, there's a couple extra bits in the post-game that unlock after the credits.
Yeah.
They're not important to understand. The credits are where the story ends. Everything in the post-game's there. They're this is what these characters were doing, and this is... and then there's the side story that has the choices. Mm-hmm. Do we want to do that all at once, or do you want to just save the post thing for a little mini thing after as a third part?
Maybe we see how far I get by the time we have to record the next part. It might be easier to just split it into 3 because then we can discuss. Because from what I understand, the post game actually does have.
It does, and I don't know. You could take it. The post game does, and it has a you have to figure this out or you get a bad ending kind of thing. Yeah. So. I don't know if you wanted to rush through that and use a guide to read it, or if you want to poke at it. You could probably even that's the one section I'd say you could poke at on stream and it would be kind of fun.
Nah, I don't believe in using guides for anything except for Baldur's Gate.
See, I used a guide because I got real fed up with trying to navigate that section, but I know you're a lot more.
I'm a lot more willing to try things and then if they don't work out, reload the game.
You've restarted Baldur's Gate how many times now?
For personal playthroughs, only... for personal playthroughs, ones that aren't on the channel or multiplayer. God. And we're not... I guess I have to count the dirge that I abandoned deliberately.
Yeah.
I think 5? But keep in mind, out of the 5, I created 3, never got past the Goblin Camp on any of them, and then I got... my current paladin that I've shown on channel a few times, she's in the end game. She's fighting the Elder Brain next time I play. And then number 5 is the next character I created with my friend to play through in a different way, and we're both on the same... it's not a multiplayer, but we're playing this similar characters at the same time and making different decisions than we made before. Mm-hmm. Because my paladin, she had created a cleric at that time and we played through kind of side by side. So we're doing that again, but with totally different characters. So technically, 5 characters, but one of them is completed, and one of them is just started, and I will be pursuing it to completion. And I have just abandoned my dirge. I just can't be mean enough. I don't want the characters to not like me. And I don't like being a murder hobo.
The other thing about our next part, and this is up to you, you don't have to include this in the video if you want to cut this. So, in lieu of making me panic add these to the next updates, they just added all 3 of our mains to the FGO. Yeah. Do we just want to add them in like a hybrid Seki reacts to Fate section at the end of the next off the shelf?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Since there's no real better place to put them. So
yeah, we'll just do that.
Okay, yeah.
That'll be easier for everyone because then they'll be fresh in my mind because there's not much I can do to research them.
And this is like what you're getting.
Yeah. So that'll be easier for everyone if we just do that. Because if we wait till the next updates, I'm not going to remember half of this. No. Like it's just not memorable enough for me to remember.
Few things are. You have the remarkable ability to forget shit.
I have simultaneously a mind like an iron trap and the mind of a goldfish. Because if I want to remember it, I will not forget it. And if I don't want to remember it, I will not remember it. It's amazing. It's great for school. Very bad for the channel.
Now, I don't want to get into an entire ass discussion on this, but we've been going for an hour, and this happened with Persona 3 as well when Realm and I did that one recently. Yeah. Very recently. Video game off the shelves are a completely different beast.
They really are. We should call them like something else, but I'm a little lazy.
They're so infrequent, I'm fine just having them as off the shelf.
Yeah, because it requires us to actually play through an entire game. I said it before,
the problem is we need to get at least 2 of us to have played through even a chunk of a game, the same game, and none of us have the same game tastes.
And to be fair, you gave me this game, 6 months ago? And you kept reminding me to play it, and...
I was hoping you might pace yourself a little bit better.
Well, and I was busy, and then school started, and then I was out of town, and then I had things I had to do on campus, and then I was busy, and then I was busy... And then I just didn't want to play this game when I could, sit on the couch and binge something else. And so, I did kind of shoot myself in the foot by only starting, 2 weeks ago. And even then, I didn't play much. I think, like I said, I only got through 2 chapters 2 weeks ago. And then I did chapter 3 last night and 4 and 5 today. So.
More arguably, this game is paced to, this is very... When I'm reading this is very much my unwind game. Where I'm at the end of a busy day, I just pull it out and I'll read a chapter. Check it. But yeah, no, that's got a good discussion out of this. We're in a unique position right now where we actually know what's going up next for these fuckers.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Oh, I can...
Because I already uploaded it.
Yeah, you did.
I'm actually on time with editing it because I don't remember where we are. I'd know exactly where we are if I was late.
Alright, what is...
Isn't there a Reacts going up next?
It is a Reacts going up next, coincidentally.
Oh, I know who it is then. I know exactly who it is then.
So, yeah, April 30th.
Yep.
Look out for it.
Oh, I'll be streaming tomorrow.
That too.
So if anyone sees this video before tomorrow, Pacific Standard Time in the afternoon, probably not starting till 3 or 4, 5 at the latest, I'll be streaming Septum. From home. I probably won't... Actually, it doesn't matter how late I play. My morning class is canceled.
Tolerance is going to be a big thing here.
Yeah, Fate's easier than a visual novel, though. Fate, let me rephrase that. FGO is easier. It's easier for me to tolerate reading through story in FGO because I get to see characters I like.
All right.
Nick Nack is thinking famous last words. Watch me prove him wrong tomorrow.
Yeah, the entire Septum thing is you working on the presumption that you want to read this because you like the chapter that I specifically rewrote because I didn't like how it turned out.
I mean, we'll see.
But yeah.
I'll probably have to use less tactics than I did for your D&D game.
Probably. And then beyond the fact that I have my weekly Fate Extra stream that I'll probably keep on schedule for, there's a non-zero chance I do a whaling stream from FGO in the very near once I get that capture card back from Seki.
I said I'll get it to you Monday morning.
I'm hurting inside. But yeah.
Why? Because of the whale? Ah, because of the whale. This is your Moby Dick.
Yeah.
Captain Ahab.
Look, let's put it this way. The one I need to wail for is going to be Alice. And if you ask me, like if we had a waifu wars over this visual novel, it would be Alice there. By a long mile.
I'm not even going to fight you on that one. Alice was the best character here.
I love Alice.
Alice was great. Also, I just desperately want to throw a fork at someone.
So,
see,
yeah.
Seki did actually read it. She didn't just read the Wikia and then pretend that she did it.
A lot.
Which I know you were worried about.
Not with this.
Oh.
Okay, I was worried about that with back like when you didn't like Fate, when we watched Fate Zero. With this, I didn't think you could find... Like, at best, you were going to find the full transcript of the visual novel.
Yeah.
But the Wikia wasn't going to have a very good summary for you.
Well... That's fair. That's fair.
Not of a visual novel. So, yeah, but there's a lot to look forward to in the near future, and we don't have... Do you remember what our outro is for these off the shelves?
Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know anything you want us to play or read next, and let us know how you felt about this in the comments.
See ya, guys.
Yep.